Every day I read various newspapers, print and online, read a variety of magazines, watch various news outlets, and always end my day by reading a couple of chapters out of various books. But with all of the information I consume on a daily basis, I often find myself contemplating all of it and trying to think with logic and reason, but adding in a bit of creativity as well to try and start and find solutions to these problems that we face in society today. I have this vision for America and how it could be better and have a government that actually supports the working class instead of suppressing it. And I'd really like to take the time to share my inner thoughts on the observations I've made and what I think are some of the solutions could be. And I need this to be some kind of therapeutic process for me to not keep so much shit in my head and let some of it out. Instead of going to a therapist, I want you, America, to be my therapist. And I'm asking you to take the role of a therapist, step back and listen to my inner thoughts and vision for America without judgment, but with instead open-mindedness, and to prevent anyone from having a preconceived notion of who I am or what I represent based on just my appearance alone. You won't see my face. You'll only hear my voice. You won't know my name. To you, I will be Patient John Galt. Now, we need to be aware that we live in a world that has politics and business so intertwined it's almost as if it's one. And right now specifically, it's intersecting with each other more than ever before. And so I may, from time to time, dip into both areas during a session. And I also need you to bear with me that I'm going to throw a lot of thoughts and information at you. So this isn't the place for listeners that want to be spoon-fed little bits of information because they can't handle receiving a full plate. With me, you will get that full plate. Now, how you digest that plate is on you. It may be overwhelming, but it often is when we actually confront the truth. We need to overwhelm ourselves with the reality that's in front of us to truly actually see the light at the end of the tunnel and how we can get there. Session will begin now. I have so much in my head that I just want to touch on a few thoughts I have, and in later sessions I'll dissect them in more detail and truly analyze it. But for now, I just like to peel off a couple of layers. The first being, we pride ourselves on living in a country with democracy, but the working class have allowed that democracy to be bought and paid for by the powerful. So when I see that the American people think that the government will be the ones to help us survive this health and economic crisis we're in the middle of, it leaves me truly disappointed that we haven't figured it out. That our government does not understand the struggles of the working class, the ones that have been hit the hardest during this time and with more suffering that's going to come. We need to start understanding who really has the power in this country. And it's not just the president, it is Congress. That Congress that is full of millionaires that during this time frame only saw their stock portfolios lose money. Their paychecks never stopped coming. They still continue to receive their astonishing $175,000 salaries, way overpaid for not doing shit for the American people. The working class are the ones that lost their jobs during this time frame, especially during the quarantine. Small businesses were being forced to close, and now some may never open back up again, and some were just recently reforced to close. Because let's face it, none of our government leaders really know how to actually lead us through this chaotic time. Congress is more focused on bailing out the corporations that back their political campaigns than truly actually assisting the small businesses that make up 44% of our economy. They put together this bullshit paycheck protection program that was supposed to help companies with under 500 employees stay afloat during this tough time. But that fund, shockingly, was gone within 2 weeks, with very little small businesses receiving any help. What about the 57% of small businesses that have less than 20 employees? Those businesses are essential and the backbone to our economy. They need the help, not multi-million-dollar corporations. What's worse is we truly still have not seen the full effect that COVID will have on the economy. We are still only in the beginning of what's to come. We still haven't seen the full effect it will have on retail, real estate, automotive, hospitality, tourism, consumer staples, and just so many other damn industries out there. I mean, just bankruptcies. Already, a total of 3,427 companies have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the U.S. this year. Now, that figure covers from the start of this year all the way till June 24th, and is close to the 3,491 filings during the first half of 2008, just before the number of corporate collapses surged amid the fallout. We ended the last financial crisis with 8,614 bankruptcies in 2008. Then that, of course, eventually rose to 12,644 in 2009. I really do believe that at the end of this crisis, we will have more bankruptcy filings than we ever had during the financial crisis, and that's sadly going to be led by small businesses. But when you look at the public companies, just the number of those that have defaulted on their debt so far this year have already surpassed the entire total of 2019. The worst of all is that the total of 119 defaults were, of course, led by the U.S., with 78 of them. Look, now, I'm not at all concerned with the companies like JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, J. Crew filing for bankruptcy. I mean, those are piss poor managed companies and have been for over 20 years, with overpaid executives failing to never embrace e-commerce, never understanding how to market on social media, among many other failures. COVID just sped up the inevitable for those companies. I am concerned about the employees of those companies that will be out of a job soon. But even more, I am concerned with the small businesses that make up 44% of our economy, and truly how they will survive this period. The small businesses that employ over 58.9 million Americans, compared to the 65.1 million that work for large companies. Now, this is where politics begins to intertwine with business and just get fucking carried away. Capitalism is supposed to allow the strong companies to survive and the weak to die off. But Congress, of course, prefers to offer bailouts to those weak multi-million-dollar corporations instead of actually letting them face the damn consequences for bad management. Our government bails them out, and then the working class gets laid off, and then those very executives get a bonus for having to make the tough decision of laying off those employees. Like it was really a choice. Do I get a bonus or do I keep staff? Do I get a bonus or do I keep staff? I'm gonna take my bonus. Fuck the staff. With Congress continuing to bail out these corporations, it leaves the small businesses to actually be the only ones living and competing in a capitalistic market, instantly giving the corporations a massive competitive advantage. They have the fallback plan of the government bailing them out when things get tough. Small businesses do not have that luxury. It is only on them to survive. It's sad when you look at before the COVID, 43 million Americans were living in poverty. And we know that the number of poverty will increase when this is all over. We have over 125 million households in this country. 24.9% of them make less than $25,000 a year. 30.1% make between 50,000 and 100,000 a year. Over half of our country makes less than 100,000 a year. Now, it is hard to make it in America, but it's even harder to make it in America when the average cost of living is now generally more than the average income. Now, what truly leaves me nauseous is the average net worth of a senator. The average net worth of a senator is $3.2 million. The average net worth of a House of Representatives is $900,000. And both receive a salary of $174,000. Doesn't matter if they do their job or not. Either way, they receive that salary. Then when they want a pay raise, they each other all vote for it. And of course they'll get it. Do you really think anyone in Congress really understands what it feels like to be part of the working class? And I mean the feeling of actually not being able to cover your bills. The feeling of an eviction is around the corner. The fear of a repo man coming for your car. To live paycheck to paycheck or to be forced to work multiple jobs just to cover the bills. No, they do not understand that. The local, state, and federal governments, they want us to struggle. In addition to wanting us to struggle, they want us to be divided. It's there so that they can make their platforms around those struggles and divisions and continue to be reelected. The media, leaders in government, those at the top, do not want the working class united. They want us divided so we don't ever challenge them. They divide us through issues like climate change, equal rights, police brutality, and the list just goes on and on and on. We will never get a system that works for the working class if we keep allowing the powerful to divide us. They should fear us, not be able to divide us. We need a government that actually looks like America, one that will work for America and not personal legacies. We right now have the opposite. We have a government that doesn't represent America and only care about their personal names being in the history books. We have lobbyists that are building regulations in every industry on behalf of their big multi-million-dollar multinational corporations, squeezing the throats of the small businesses to the point where they can't even breathe. America's a diverse country, but when you really look at our Congress and who is in it, it doesn't even come close to show diversity. Just the age diversity is embarrassing. We have 5 senators that are in their 80s, 18 are in their 70s, 32 are in their 60s, 30 are in their 50s, only 14 are in their 40s, and only 1 is in their 30s. Our Congress is over half filled with those that are eligible for Social Security. What's worse is we have very little youth representation. I can't talk about the diversity of our Congress without talking a little bit about the race. I know it's an uncomfortable topic for most of us, but we need to actually start talking and having these conversations that make us uncomfortable. Through that, we will actually enact change. Until we talk about it, nothing will change. Now, let's look at the leadership and all the racial issues we have in our country. You must look at the leadership and who's on top. 10.5% of our Congress are black. 9.4% are Hispanic. 3.8% are mixed or Asian. And the rest are white. That means out of 551 members of Congress, we only have 54 blacks, 51 Hispanics, and 20 that are either Asian or mixed. Those of ethnicity and actual positions of power to vote only make up 23%. Now, I have to repeat that because that's just astonishing to me. Those of ethnicity and positions of power to vote only make up 23%. Think about that. The systematic racism in this country will continue until those numbers and percentages change. We will not make progress actually combating racism within America unless we actually elect those that understand and face the problems that those of ethnic backgrounds are confronted with every day. We need to stop electing those that are up on a fucking high horse saying they hear you. This is not just a federal problem either. We have a lack of diversity in our state governments as well. I'm embarrassed that out of 50 governors in the U.S., we have 2 that are not white. We have over 122 million people of color in this country. How do we only have 2 governors and 116 Congress members of color? What the fuck, America? That's truly embarrassing. This is 2020, but yet it doesn't feel like we're making much progress at all. It feels like we're going backwards. I mean, just a couple thoughts on gender diversity in Congress. Despite women outnumbering us men 51% to 49%, so 165.9 million women to 159.4 million men. Yet women only make up 24.2% of our Congress. 131 out of 551. That's pathetic. But of course, once again, it is not just a federal level problem. It's also at the state level. And when you once again look at the governors in America, we only have 8 that are women. Why are we really surprised we're still having the debate on Roe versus Wade? Because men are still the ones voting on it. The right to have an abortion will still continue to be decided by men until women take positions of power. Of course, the only way for that to happen is for more women to go out there and put themselves out there as a candidate. But really, and I think about this a lot, whose fault is it really? When you look at why America is the way it is, whose fault is it? And I don't think a lot of you will agree with this because it has to do with accountability, but it's our fault. It is our fault. We are the ones with the power to vote, with the power to elect our leaders. But we have yet to truly use that power to ensure our government is actually for the American people and not just for the powerful. It is about damn time we use that power. Let us dismantle the system that favors the powerful and put it back in the hands of the people. I want the government to work for the American people, not the elites and corporations. But the only way we can take it back is if we stop starting activist campaign after activist campaign that are all dependent on getting leaders to listen and act. Instead, we need those activists to start putting their names on ballots and campaigning to be elected. You cannot put legislation in place unless you are elected. And we shouldn't have 2 political parties that are more focused on the power that they each hold and their personal legacies instead of caring what's good for the American people. We have politicians that are only voting for their political party bills instead of voting for what would best benefit the American people. We need to move past the confinements of just 2 political parties that, let's face it, are both putting this country in the wrong direction. They have truly shown us that bipartisan politics does not exist in this country, and they refuse to allow it to ever exist. What's truly scary is that those that are making the regulations for industries aren't a worker that has experience in that industry and has been doing it their entire life, but instead it's a former senior executive that never did the fucking job, making regulations work in the favor of their prior employer. Workers are the backbone of America, not executives. But on campaign trails, politicians battle each other for the workers' vote. And then when it actually comes time to act, they only push for their executive peers' beliefs and what would best benefit them. The sad part about it all in our entire political system is that we fall for their bullshit every single time. I mean, we have executives in this country that are making 278 times what the average worker makes. And it pisses me off that the CEOs have seen a growth of over 1,000% in 40 years, all on the worker's back. When today's real average wage with inflation has the same purchasing power it did 40 years ago for the worker. The wage gap will continue to get worse unless the working class does something about it. Because Congress has clearly shown over the past 40 years that they don't care. The systematic racism that exists in this country will never go away unless those of color are actually put in positions of power. The protests that we see that are happening today, they've been happening for over 50 years. Nothing will change and nothing will happen till those that are actually leading the protest become candidates themselves. They care, not the politicians. But on a quick side note, if anybody thinks any company that's pulling advertising from Facebook because it's the right thing to do, or that they're trying to push Facebook to make changes, needs to wake the fuck up. Facebook has never taken any meaningful action against the excessive spread of hate and misinformation. But now, all of a sudden, we're in an economic period where every one of these companies are evaluating all of their operational expenses to make cuts. So when you look at the biggest expenses, which are generally payroll and marketing, they've already conducted layoffs, they've closed stores, and now they're slashing their marketing budgets. It just so happens to coincide with a major social media campaign against Facebook for pushing companies to boycott advertising on them. So now they can not only cut costs, but also get free publicity from it too. They think they're doing a good thing and they care. Let's really face it. These corporations, just like our Congress, over the past 10 years since Facebook's existence, have shown they don't give a fuck about what Facebook is doing. As soon as the economy is better, they will go right back to advertising on Facebook. And don't worry though, they'll put out that bullshit statement that Facebook has taken significant steps to deter the spread of hate and misinformation on their platform. But we will all know, in reality, nothing will change. Facebook benefits way too much from all of that. And to be honest, the board of directors don't have any real power to actually challenge Mark Zuckerberg. Plus, they're just weak. Every one of those members are weak. But back to why America is the way it is and why it's our fault, and also how we can actually change that. But no matter how much whites try to listen and understand the racism that exists in this country, they will actually never truly understand it, because they never have to be able to walk in the shoes of those that are ethnic. It has to be people of color that need to take positions of power to put legislation in place to change that. We have advocates everywhere. Advocates for civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, homeless awareness, mental health awareness, climate change. The list just goes on and on and on and on. But look around. These activists all need to look around and realize they are the ones that care about the issues. Very few politicians genuinely care about those issues. The people that care deeply need to be the ones campaigning for political positions so they can actually get elected to do something about it. The ones that shouldn't be campaigning are the ones that have been in politics for decades, not accomplishing shit. Those politicians that are funded by the powerful, that are just so weak, they allow lobbyists to make the decisions for them. We cannot move forward until we stop relying on those at the top to listen and make change. We have to be the ones to make the change happen by pursuing those positions of power. We can no longer afford to rely on others. It is time we rely on ourselves, to see the change we seek in the world. What really scares me right now, most of all, is the message that's being pushed to go vote. I hate this message of just to go out and vote. Like it will change anything. Voting is important, but we're voting for the same shitty candidates that have been in power for years, not doing anything for the American people. It's important we vote, but it's also important we know who we're voting for and their track records. We also need to be actually holding those accountable for what they say on the campaign trail and the actions they take when they are elected. Accountability is what we are lacking most in this country. Accountability is lacking in leadership, but accountability is lacking in the working class as well. When you look around at all the things wrong in America, we did that. It is our fault. We kept repeating the same behavior. Vote, then re-elect, then vote, then re-elect, vote, then re-elect. Constantly hoping that it would change and would one day benefit us. Guess what though? We put them in power, and the best part is we can now take them out of power by leveraging democracy in the workers' favor. You can fight more effectively when you are actually in the ring than just being on the spectator on the outside, cheering and yelling and criticizing. What's really great about America is we can change at any time through our democracy. Now let's really talk about democracy specifically, our elections that center around it. Every 2 years, all 435 House of Representatives are up for re-election. This year just so happens to coincide with re-election and the presidency. On November 3rd, 2020 is the day you can cast your vote to change who represents America. Every 6 years, members of Congress or members of the Senate are up for re-election. This year we have 33 of the 100 seats up for re-election on November 3rd, 2020. Once again, you can cast your vote to change who represents America. But again, the federal government are not the only ones up for re-election. We have statewide races that are happening. 11 states have their governors up for re-election. Out of the largest 100 cities in America, we have 29 elections for mayors. Voting in the president election is important, very important. But so is voting in all forms of government. Congress, governor, mayor, city council, all of it. Every one of them, in their little way, lead to how we live our lives in society. And if you really don't like what a politician is doing in your local, state, or federal government, don't continue to criticize the politician. Do something about it. Give them some damn competition by campaigning for their job. Now, perfect example of someone who did just that is AOC out of New York, Queens, New York. She didn't like the system that's continuing to favor the powerful while leaving the worker behind. Now, I may not personally agree with all of her political point of views, but I do have to tip my hat to her and respect the hell out of her for beating a 10-term candidate and taking the initiative to be the one to fight on the front lines for workers' rights. That's huge. She showcased that the candidate who cares deeper about issues and actually shows that they'll fight for the worker will win elections. She defied this preconceived notion that you need wealth, social influence, and power to be elected. Now, that's traditionally been the path for quite a few decades now, but what AOC did was prove that that's bullshit in today's political climate. You can now beat the powerful at their own game by simply putting the needs of the worker ahead of the powerful. AOC was campaigning while working as a bartender and waiting tables. So you really actually have no damn excuse on why you can't go and campaign. She shut the door on corporate donations and opened the door to old school grassroots campaigning. She was the first candidate in 20 years to actually knock on doors in her community, to actually talk to her constituents, not talk down to them from a stage at a fundraiser, but actually talk to them in their neighborhood, side by side. And what's worse is, like, during the campaign, she faced an extraordinary amount of press scrutiny. An opponent that was outspending her 18-1, and that very opponent that had the additional advantage of being endorsed by practically everyone. The New York governor, both New York senators, the mayor of New York, 31 trade unions, among numerous other organizations. Despite everything that was against her, all of that, AOC came out on top, victorious, and is now representing New York as a House representative, fighting in the ring every day for the forgotten workers of America. She's relatable because she is one of us. She actually understood the struggles that we face on a daily basis. But the problem is, she's alone in this fight. We will not be able to put the power back in the workers' hands unless we push for more people to enter the ring and fight for our rights. Fight to get the power back. We need warriors. We need soldiers to go out there and do it. You only have to be 18 in most states to run for mayor, 25 to run for the House of Representatives, 30 to either run for state senator or the state governor. The only way we can support these small businesses that make up 44% of our economy is to have leaders that come from there, making the decisions that affect other small businesses. All of these upcoming generations are passionate, but they're not effective in actually enacting change. They're not understanding how to play the very game that the powerful play. You can't change the system from the outside. You have to do it from within the system. No matter how sparkling, bedazzling your protest sign is, it's not effective. We have to start replacing those in positions of power with those that are passionate about issues, not just campaigning on it because it's a way to get votes, not just campaigning on it because one of their campaign managers or polling analyst members are driving them in that direction. If we all were to contribute our best individual efforts in taking back the power, we would all prosper together. We cannot prosper until we stop allowing ourselves to be divided. We have to unite behind the power of people. We can't think with emotion anymore. We have to start thinking with strategy. Pursue political positions in the local, state, and federal governments. Appoint those of power of regulating industries. Start thinking tactically, not just through a social media campaign, hoping things change. If we do that, we will be able to make the system work in the working class favor. But the question I'd really honestly like to ask America is, are you ready for a revolution that doesn't need to involve violence? Instead, just uses the system that the top manipulated in their favor. I can't stress this enough. Democracy can work for us all if we work together and enter the ring to fight. I know we can win. For God's sakes, we are ready. Have them outnumbered. We are the ones that they want us to vote for. We just need to start fighting with our minds instead of this continuous fight through social media campaigns and protest that aren't doing shit. They're bringing attention to the problem, yes, but they're not solving the problem. I think we should stop there because I'm just going to keep going and I'm getting a little too angry. Next session, I'd really like to dive deeper into the power of Congress, the elections, but how we can get it back to work for the working class. But before I end, I'd really like to make a quick comment that these sessions are not for everyone. They're for those that don't want to be part of the problem. Instead, they want to be part of finding the solution. I will not be putting all of these sessions on the mainstream platforms for long. I don't want them to have it. I want you to have it directly without a middleman and have it 100% ad-free. But the content that comes out of these sessions are my intellectual property and my thoughts, and like life, nothing is free. I've spent a lot of time and money learning everything I know and will continue to spend more time and money educating myself on subject matters I may not know enough about. And in my life, there are 3 most valuable forms of currency: time, money, and resources. You should never spend one without receiving another. I'd love to talk about that more in a session later on. But if you would like to join in on these sessions and hear my thoughts and work together on finding solutions on how we can take back the power from the elites and corporations and put it back in the working class hands, then become a subscriber at patientjohngalt.com. patientjohngalt.com. The more subscribers, the more frequent you'll hear from me. Now, I love quotes, so I'd like to end the session with one. And we'll end it with a quote by Marcus Aurelius, who I absolutely love reading about. Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. That is the end of today's session. I'm Patient John Galt. You'll hear from me soon.